What is happening, you guys? Welcome back to the Let's Go Win podcast. You're in for a treat today. We have a former athlete who is still super involved in athletics. And I love talking basketball. I love talking, and this man knows a lot about it. After retiring from his career in professional basketball, Joel Green founded Pro Level Training, PLT, which has become a seven-figure company. In addition to running PLT, Green is also the national director for Nike sports camps, as well as an accomplished speaker. He was honored to speak to thousands and deliver his own TED Talk. He has developed a reputation for personal excellence and motivational talks that contribute tangible advice for attaining desired goals. Many of the messages he has delivered on are conveyed in his first book, Filtering: The Way to Extract Strength from the Struggle. Love that book title. Brother, welcome to the show.
Man, thanks so much for having me on. I truly appreciate it.
So I'm guessing growing up, you're like, yeah, man, I'm going to play ball, and then I'm going to go be a national speaker, and I'm going to motivate people. That's what happened to you, right? That's how it worked.
Not at all. That would have been nice, but no, definitely didn't happen that way, man. It was much more windier route that occurred between childhood and now, man.
Well, tell me a little bit about it, man. I mean, I grew up, I played ball in college. I love basketball, but I love how we do take these routes and detours, and you take a fork in the road, but I love what you're doing today. Tell me a bit about your story. How did you become the director of Nike sports camps and speaking and inspiring and writing books? There's got to be so much to the story.
Man, I feel like I have to start at the current date. I feel like I have to do what I'm currently doing. I'll be honest with you. I feel like life has pushed me into this area just by way of being an athlete my entire life, playing sports, gaining so many lessons and principles and characteristics. I'm around so much youth to where even during my off seasons while I was still playing professionally, there would be a ton of kids from Philadelphia, where I'm from, that would want to come work out with me. I'm like, nope, can't work out. You can watch, or you can rebound for me, things like that. But I began showing those same kids the game of basketball, right? And then I started to develop a love for it. And it just helped me to transition into what I'm currently doing. But in those same kids, I saw so much of myself, obviously at 10 years old or 13, 14 years old. And, growing up in North Philly, it wasn't easy at all. I grew up in an abandoned house, man. I mean, we literally had graffiti on our walls, holes in some of the staircase, make fun of like almost playing hopscotch around the holes. Like, it was different, wearing donated clothes from the church. And I was around some violence early on in my neighborhood at 6 years old, 10 feet away from a shooting. And, just witnessing that, seeing someone get shot and have to run from that thing, and I was going to be next. It developed me, gave me common sense. I'll be honest, very early in life, to where I feel like common sense is an awareness. So I had this awareness early on in life of my surroundings, my environment, of other people, the good people, the bad people, things like that. And as I grew older, I was very conscious of my surroundings, of people that I let into my circle. I didn't trust everybody. And that's something I had to really grow, even in business. I had to learn how to trust other people, even those that I may have hired. I'm like, okay, Joel, relinquish this control and trust the personnel that you hired. But by way of gaining all of these things, man, I feel like I had to begin speaking on these things. And I began speaking, about 7 or 8 years ago, and, was fortunate to give a TED Talk a couple years ago. But just to really help people to understand, as much as I have gained about life, personally and in business, and also by way of sports. So I love and appreciate the journey of everything.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, man, to come from growing up in an abandoned house to be able to then, show that, hey, I am going to predict my destiny, my future. I have control of that, even if I'm going through adversity. And obviously that strengthened you, I think, in so many ways. Yeah. I'm curious, though, from being an athlete and performing, I mean, that's just something that we grew up with, a basketball. And so going out and performing in front of a crowd, no problem.
Right.
going up and speaking in front of a crowd, a little bit different, man. It's like, I know we've been talking all our life, but we don't think that way. How was that for you? Was it pretty natural, Joel?
No, it was all right. Now I have to say this. I grew up under two ministers, right? My parents, they're pastors of a church. So I saw speaking and public speaking from a stage my entire life, right? My uncle was a pastor, that was the church I was born into, and I saw my parents transition into the same thing. So I saw it my whole life. But man, it was nerve-wracking for me to have to get up on a stage and address people. I remember the feeling I used to have. It was like, man, I was cool and collected, and all of a sudden my armpits just started to sweat. My, forehead started perspiring. I'm like, what in the world is going on? And I just didn't sound or feel confident. But I'll be honest, I told someone recently that what helped me make the switch was the words that I was up there to speak wasn't for me. It was for the people that were listening. And that helped me to take my mind off of myself. I was being real selfish when I was afraid to speak, because it was all about me, how I felt. But the moment I started realizing it was about how I was about to make other people feel, that's when it took them, again, it really helped wipe away so much of the nervousness. And I just say, I really want to help whoever I'm speaking to. And it made it that much easier. Now I'm able to enjoy it. I'm able to be up there and not have to memorize anything, just speak as if I'm talking to you right now. So it was a nice transition, but man, I remember how it felt early on.
I love what you're saying, because when you talk to really powerful speakers, they almost say it's almost like it's not my words, right? And coming from that background, that faith background, you hear ministers, you hear them talk about, this is not my words. I'm delivering it. So I really like that. You have a really interesting topic that you talk about, and I'm really excited to understand what you're saying. You say you can't reap the glory without sowing into the meaning. Mm-hmm. Tell me more about that, man. Exactly what do you mean when you say that?
Well, I mean, man, just dealing with reaping and sowing and reaping, it's levels to it, period. Good ways and bad ways. When people say you reap what you sow, so often it's looked at in a bad way, right? Because it's the context is usually in a bad light, right? But people forget about the other side. You can reap what you sow. If you sow good things, that means you'll reap great things, as opposed to just always reaping bad things because you sowed something, negative. So for me, it's just like it's an equal side to this thing, right? Like if you put something out there, you're going to receive that back. And I feel like, if you put the right thing out there, you'll receive it back double, tenfold many times. I've seen it. I'm a witness to it. This is not a religious thing for me. This is just a life thing. As I'm sowing things into my son, who's 9 years old, I reap the benefit of just the gratitude I feel when I see him perform well in school. When I have a parent-teachers conference and they tell me, man, your son that's an amazing kid. I'm like, wow. Like literally, that can kind of make me overwhelmed to where it almost brings a tear to my eyes. I'm like, I know what I've intentionally sowed into him. So, again, when it comes to business, I work my behind off, man. I work so hard, and I try to get other people to understand, like, look, you will be reciprocated. If you put out there amazing work, if you're aware in some form or fashion, you're going to get an amazing result back. Don't be oblivious or blind to the results, because it may come in different forms. It's not always in the way that you expected, but the results will be great that you will have returned.
Yeah, and that's not always easy to see. Obviously, whether it's in business, whether it's in athletics, you're putting so much work up front. Mm-hmm. And in this instant gratification world, it's like, wait, it's not quite there yet. What's going on?
Right.
But it does, right? And I love hearing that. I want to ask you, because you mentioned business and you mentioned really even maybe not trusting people innately when you first meet them. Mm-hmm. But obviously, PLT, pro level training, you definitely you're starting to reap the benefits of all that hard work, and it's providing so much value. Tell me what pro level training, what's that all about, brother? I want to hear more of exactly what y'all are doing over there.
Well, I mean, when I started the company, this was in 2011 now, so about 11 years ago, it was just me, as it is for most, entrepreneur ventures. It's just you. And it was me saying, okay, I enjoy showing kids how to play basketball, right? It was just it was natural for me. I could talk it all day. I can watch it all day. I can do it with my eyes closed. So I just began showing kids how to play the game of basketball. I would show them after my workouts. After I would pick them up at 5 a.m. to go rebound for me. It was 1 or 2 kids. And I just enjoyed it. So I said, okay, let me actually step away from playing basketball, because I always had a knack for entrepreneurship. I always wanted to start my own company. When I was playing abroad in Europe as a pro, I got my business license while I was in Ireland at the time. And so I knew this tug toward business was going to get me at some point. And I decided to see what it was about. I said, okay, let me take a season away. If it begins to work out, I'll stay with it. If not, you'll see me back on the court real soon. But literally within the first year of business, this is rare, but we made the major partnership with Nike Sports Camps. And pro level training, we were able to then not do just 1 kid, 2 kids. I was doing small groups. We were able to do that for the masses in the form of a camp. And so, we had our pro level training camp. The first one was in New Jersey. And then I reached out to my network. That's why I tell people in business all the time. You have a piece of gold in your phone. Like your phone book, other people that either has the same interest as you, or that can help take you to the next step, or half the step, upward. But you just got to look through your phone book and see who you can network with, who you already know. You don't have to look for all these new people out there, all these moguls on Instagram and TikTok. You have some people that don't have to be moguls, but that can help you level up constantly. But we're always looking for gold and diamonds elsewhere. That's another conversation. But that's what I did. I looked at my phone book and I literally said, hey, this is a former teammate of mine. Hey, look, you're down in Dallas. I see you guys don't even have Nike Sports Camps down there. I think we can set up what I have going on in New Jersey. Okay, cool. Got it. And just begin expanding our pro level training Nike camps around the country. And then we helped Nike get into major markets: Chicago, Dallas, Minneapolis, Cedar Rapids, Iowa, some major markets, Princeton, New Jersey. So pro level training just began growing around the country, man. It's I love what it's turning into.
Well, it's obviously, I think, a large part because of your mindset. Something obviously over my left shoulder, mindset matters. We talk about this. You have this way about you, brother, and I'm curious if you've always been this way, where you really see positive. You're pushing out this love to the world, and now it's being reciprocated. Was that a natural thing for you? Is this a learned behavior? Where'd that come from?
It was a learned behavior for sure. That wasn't always me. As a child, I was a unfortunate product of my environment. I'll be honest. Getting in trouble from time to time. I wasn't a bad kid, but when trouble came my way, I did reciprocate the trouble. Right? I wasn't one to start it, but I had no problem finishing it. As opposed to saying, you know what, I'm not going to give time to finishing because that's not the smartest thing to do. But as I got into basketball, 9 years old or so, that really helped me to say, nope, there's something better out here that I need to be kinder to others for, right? I need to make sure I'm doing well in school, being kind to others to make sure I can stay on this court to do this thing that I really love to do. And just over time, I began seeing just different things, whether I experienced something good or something bad. I didn't mention it earlier, but at 17, I tragically lost one of my older brothers, and he was only 25. And that was a vital point for me, man. That it changed everything, literally. That's how I start my book off. The introduction to my book, it talks about that morning of the incident that occurred, and that showed me that I had a choice, right? Because I remember I shut down for weeks. I shut down. I didn't go to school. This is my senior year of high school as a 17-year-old. I didn't go to school for over a week. I didn't want to see anybody. I wore a dark hoodie, a black hoodie, a hood on every day. And one of my uncles came over and told me, look, I know Kevin he's not here anymore, but you are, man. You're still here. You're still alive. And he just helped me to see that I got to keep living, and I have to see the positive side of things. And I went back to school and started making these promises to my brother. I'm going to get a scholarship to college, things that we were talking about before he passed. I'm going to do better in the classroom. I made an honor roll for the first time in my life that year, as a 12th grader. It took me 12 years of school to do it, but I saw something in myself like, wow, after such a tragedy, I'm able to draw some motivation from it and actually do things I've never done before. Getting a full scholarship to college months after that happened, making an honor roll months after it happened. So ever since that point, man, it showed me there's two sides to this thing. You got a choice to see it. Many times we're just more comfortable seeing the negative side of it because that's what's on the surface, but it's something beneath it.
Yeah, it is. I was actually having this conversation on my last podcast because I don't know why as human beings, it takes that tragedy to earn or to realize or to bring to light the perspective that we need to really start living in the now, like really
Right.
give it everything we got. I don't know, man. It's a question I ponder often. I lost my dad this year and it's horrible and I miss him, but man, my perspective is just, it's better. I'm operating at a higher level. So I don't know. You have thoughts on why it takes us these tragedies to really shape our perspective so that we value every day that we're here?
Well, first off, my condolences, man. That's a tough loss. I feel like our default is to just, enjoy life, right? That's our default mode of operation. Enjoy life, go with the flow of it. And many times the flow of it isn't the most motivating thing, right? I'm just being honest. The flow of life by default isn't the most motivating and pushing thing. So that's why we get things shaken up every once in a while to wake us up. That shake up to wake up is a serious thing. And that's exactly why, again, to even go backwards in the conversation a little bit, why I'm doing what I do as a speaker. I want to shake people up from the stage to let them know what I've been through that woke me up. So you guys don't have to go through a tragedy or have to wait on something to say, all right, now let me wake up. No, I'm going to tell as many people as I possibly can. Don't wait for that moment. You don't have to wait on hindsight to give you answers. Here's some foresight, right? So life can be a setup sometimes, man. Like you said, why do we have to wait? We get set up by being very comfortable, and with that, and with this comfort zone, it's a lot of danger that comes by way of it because we're not becoming our best selves while we're comfortable, and the things that makes us all uncomfortable is something that's strenuous. Like, again, you being an athlete, you understand, like, it just being in the weight room, that strenuous work is what leads to muscle building. Like, you have to put them under duress. It's not until we're under duress in some form or fashion, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, so it's like, okay, let me level up and become better now.
Yeah, you've used that word a couple times, and it's one of my favorites. So I want to talk about this because it's clearly part of your DNA, and that's leveling up. Where you mentioned it earlier, you recognize opportunities. You're over in Ireland, and you're already thinking about, hey, how can I go to this next level? Because at some point, I'm no longer going to be Joel, the basketball player.
Exactly.
To have that foresight, brother, because so many of us as athletes, when that's stripped away, when that identity is gone, whoa, now what? And I've talked to so many athletes on this. So I guess my question is that level up. Talk to a little bit more about, this is clearly something you're intentional about, that you're constantly leveling up. You're seeking getting better on a daily. Is that true? I mean, is this just something that like you're intentional about it on every single day?
I'm very, very intentional about it. And again, I don't feel like I have any fears, but I have a major hesitation about complacency. Like, I've seen what that has done to me in the past when I may have won a championship, right? And I'm celebrating too long. And while I'm celebrating, I probably should have been back in the gym or back at the track working out and, doing back on the field doing sprints. And all of a sudden, I'm not as great as I could have been when I get back on the court. And so experiencing those things as an athlete, again, now transitioning those things off the court into just everyday life, I'm hesitant to, I don't want to become complacent, man. You can call it a fear if you want. You really can say that, because I fear the results, what could come by way of becoming complacent. I make myself uncomfortable every day on purpose. I wake up very early on purpose because it's not a comfortable place for me, but it's so fulfilling because I know the results that's going to come as the result of it. By me waking up 2 hours before my whole circle of earth and world is awake, I know I'm able to get 2 extra hours on everybody else. I get solitude. There's nobody texting me, they're asleep. Nobody's calling me, they're asleep. Nobody's emailing me unless they're in Europe. You know, it's like it feels great. So I make myself uncomfortable, put myself under duress, you know, intentionally, because I know if I do that, it will cause me to constantly level up. Honestly, there's no other option for me to level up if I'm intentional about making myself uncomfortable, becoming comfortable with that state.
Yeah, there's something about where you grew up. And the easy one is talking about Kobe and Mamba mentality. You got Joel talking about something very similar. Two of my best friends, man, I talked to him about, man, you guys from Philly have this insatiable desire and work ethic. Is that something like blue collar that's just bred into you guys? Or it's like, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to drive harder than you. I'm going to outwork you. It's got to be a fabric part of the culture or something. I've been to Philly, but I have never lived there. But it is a common theme when I talk to you guys from that area. You guys have this different kind of feel and look and just grit, I think is what it is.
I mean, it's definitely a part of the culture, man. That's all I knew. I'll be honest. That's all I knew. You know, even as a youth athlete playing in the bitty basketball leagues, dude, competitive, right? It was the parents on the sideline, you know, the playgrounds that we would go to in the different neighborhoods where you playing in North Philly, South Philly, or West Philly. It was just, you would have thought you were at an NBA event, right? And this is a 12-year-old youth basketball game. But it was that nature, it was that culture of win or else. I'm going to win or I'm going to win, right? That was like the mentality that we had as kids. And I didn't realize it until I began going other places. I'm like, okay, everybody doesn't operate this way. I began meeting a lot of people, obviously everywhere that does, but I'm so glad I did come up in that setting. And you bring up Kobe, man. I was able to talk to Kobe for about 30 minutes one day. And he gave me, it was me, him, and my dad. And he gave me, you know, just amazing insight into, I wrote about it in my book. I call it Moment with the Mamba. And he told me things that I never heard before. One thing in particular, and I didn't even fully understand it at the time. He already won a championship by this time. And, you know, I was only 16. He was about 22 at the time. And he said, I got to be willing to see black, you know, when I'm working towards something. And I mean, me and him, we played for the same AAU team, him about 5 or 6 years before me. But once he found that out, he just took a great interest in me. He found out I was an all-city basketball player, and we just had an amazing moment. But I was like, oh, shoot. It was kind of scary to hear, like, gotta be willing to see black. But he's like, you gotta be willing to tap out. If you telling me right now, as I told him, I wanted to be great, I want to be good. You telling me that, okay, this is what you gotta be willing to do. You gotta be willing to go down trying, so that when the lights are on, when it's game time, that's easy. So he was just telling me, man, do the hard stuff so that the other part is just easy for you. If you do it easy in practice, the game gonna be hard. You got to reverse it. So that mentality is definitely part of the culture we came up in.
Yeah, it is one of those life's curious things, because I watched him his entire career in the NBA, but I didn't understand until after he has passed what Mamba mentality was. Maybe the latter part of his career, but I don't think I could appreciate it. And again, it's just one of those funny things, brother. I want to ask you, because you do talk about if you can cultivate courage, or is that an innate thing? And I'm curious because, again, it's on my bracelet right here. Courage, fun, transcend. I mean, courage is something I talk about, I coach on. It's something I'm imparting to my sons, right? To not allow fear to dictate where they're going to go or achieve their dreams. So can we cultivate courage, brother? Is it a learned behavior?
Yes, man. There's a moment to where, my son, again, he's 9 years old, but since he was about 3, in the car, we will always go over different words, right? And the meaning of the words. So faith, courage, focus. Again, he didn't know what any of these things meant, but like as far as the application of these things, but I just wanted him to know some words that really meant something to me. So I'd never forget, literally he was 3 years old and we talking about courage in the car. So I'm like, okay, so what's courage again? And he would tell me in his own words what courage was. And I would pounce on opportunities to help him see what courage felt like. So I never forget, he was afraid to go down the sliding board, right? It's funny, it's two stories in particular, but he was afraid to go down, it was at a playground, man. Sliding board wasn't that big, but for whatever reason, I think he was afraid to go up the ladder to get to the board to slide down. And I'm like, remember what we talked about, right? This is what courage actually looks like. So what I did was I picked him up. So you don't have to climb up there. I'll put you up on the top, right? So I put him up there. He slid down. He felt amazing because it was a fun slide down. And he felt what courage felt like. Like, okay, I'm afraid, but I did it anyway. And it's like, courage don't mean you don't have to be afraid. No, you can be afraid. That's natural. Fear is a natural thing. And then when you feel it, I'm not afraid to have a fear from time to time. I just mean I'm alive. I'm human. But don't let it stop. Move forward no matter what. And he was able to go up the ladder on the stuff, and he did it. He wanted to do it over and over. He wanted that feeling, that end result over and over again. And that's what I would love for people to understand. On the other side of fear, man, by way of courage is a bridge. On the other side of this fear, it's the fulfillment is so amazing and exhilarating that you will forget that you ever were afraid, but you gotta cross that bridge of courage. And I love moments of being able to exercise courage because it helps you, again, let's talk about leveling up. It helps you to grow, you know what I mean, in amazing ways. So I really feel like it can be cultivated as long as you're aware of those moments to exercise it. And then all of a sudden it's like, man, you exercise it a little bit more, and all of a sudden you're just a courageous being. You know what I mean? And it taps into something I talk about often as far as fearless to become fearless. It's just like, you got to break things down. You know what I mean? Fear a little bit less over here. You ain't got to break the whole thing down and be a superhero, but just conquer a part of it. Once that's done, conquer another little part, and all of a sudden you appear this courageous person.
Tell you what, man, I'm starting to write down quite a few one-liners, brother. You got a few. I've never heard courage is a bridge. I say courage is like a muscle. It gets stronger the more you use it, right? But I love that courage is a bridge. I'm curious on this because you have this cool demeanor about you, and it's going to go two-part because I have to imagine, and I talk to my sons about this, being a monster out on that court, being a monster, not in I'm going to harm someone, but ferocious.
Absolutely.
And then being able to be cool and collected off the court. That's part one. And part two is same idea. You said shake to wake. And again, man, you got this cool, calm demeanor about you. But when you're trying to shake somebody, when you're speaking, it's probably not all sunshine and rainbows. So no. Talk about that mentality, that lion, that wolf, that tiger, that monster, whatever it is that you take out onto the court, because I think this is so important for everyone to understand that you have multiple personas, and that's okay.
Absolutely, dude. That's so fine. Like, I mean, I feel like we get a high off of being able to be another person in some venue or not. like obviously we enjoy ourselves, we love ourselves, hopefully, but it's nothing like being able to show another side of yourself. I feel like we all have this dog inside of us. We all have this, this is for context, we all have like this villain inside of us that, this villainous side of us that we want to release in some form or fashion. Now, obviously, hopefully it's channeled in the right way, right? So for me, it was basketball, sports, athletics overall, to where I can be mean, right? I'm just being honest. I can be mean out there and it's okay. Like I'm not cursing at other people and talking about their moms or anything, but I can let out aggression and it's okay. And because again, we all have that aggressive energy inside of us. But unfortunately, if we don't have an outlet, that's when it's let out in the wrong ways many times. That's why I'm a huge advocate for sports. So I'm like, hey, kids, get into a sport so you can let that aggression out and not get in trouble in school for letting it out in the wrong way. But that's when, man, it is okay to have that persona. I call it, you've heard this before, I'm sure, but the switch, right? Like, be kind, be loving, be an amazing individual off the court, off the field. But once you're on that court and you line up against even your best friend, they are not your best friend in that moment. I want you to go at them like you don't know. They are a stranger in that moment. And I have to tell my son that. Like, look, you're going to be playing your best friend this weekend. He's not your best friend until the game is over. You know what I mean? Because if you see him that way during the game, you'll let him slide on different things. And so that switch is so important, man. Like my son has seen me play. He sees daddy out there, and he saw me more aggressive. He's seen highlights of me and I'm yelling at guys' faces. I'm not yelling at anybody's faces off the court. I'm a kind person, but that switch is important. And yeah, man, I love that you brought that up, man. That's such an important attribute. And I forget the second part of the question.
Yeah. So the second part was when you shake to wake, because again, talking to you, man, you're well spoken, you're calm, you have a cool demeanor. But when you're trying to shake somebody to wake them up, that's not easy to just say it with kind words. So does that come out when you're on stage a little bit? Is it a little bit of that ferociousness?
Yeah, it has to. When I speak about my life, quite a bit. And I'm passionate about it, right? I'm passionate about my experiences. I'm passionate about just helping other people. And it just naturally will come out a certain way, 20, 30% into whatever I'm talking about. And it has to. And I'll be honest, I'm big on conviction. I want you to feel like I'm less than I actually am or could be. I want you to feel that when you walk out of the room after I talk. I want you to feel like, man, I haven't been doing enough. Man, I got to do better. Man, maybe I should be looking at things with a different perspective. I want you to feel like I help strip you down a little bit in order to build you up. And so, yeah, that comes by way of, helping to shake people up in some form or fashion and saying, no, you haven't done enough. You can do more. You thought you did, but here's why you didn't. Not that I know it all. I don't. I'm still learning. That's why you see books behind me. I love to read. I am a student, man. But when it's things that I know about, right? It's some things you think you know about. There's other things you know about. And that's what I speak on. The things that I know about. And I've had to go through life to get to the other side of, and I'm like, okay, now let me talk about these things.
Yeah. What's interesting is when I call it embrace the suck, because I imagine when you're speaking, you're not talking about, hey, let me tell you about the game where I had 30, 10, and 12. No. Like you're talking about the greatest adversity I ever was faced with. Exactly. I'm guessing losing my brother. I'm guessing so the question is, when we get these adversities, when we have something that just sucks, man, and it's like, this is, where our mind goes is the worst thing in the world. Shouldn't we kind of be saying thank you? And I'm curious on how you overcome, because I know you've overcome just talking about your brother losing him at an early age. And I'm sorry, I don't think I said that earlier, but when something bad happens, how do you overcome these things to see the light? Because in the darkness, it's not always easy to see the light, even though we know that's really what's coming next.
Right. I mean, for me, it's literally what I just wrote about, man. It's a method that I came up with myself. I call it filtering. You know, it's literally a process that I go through to where I break my situations and the circumstance down. Because so often for all of us, if we're going through something difficult, it's huge, it's overwhelming, it's tough to hold on to and manage all at once. So for me, I was the same way, still the same way. I needed things to be simplified for myself. So that came by way of me saying, okay, let me put this thing through some type of filtering process, you know, emotionally, and break this down to where I can honestly put it into bite-sized pieces for myself, to where I can manage it. And again, handle this part of the circumstance as opposed to trying to handle the whole overwhelming thing. And it pleases me. It makes me feel good when I just handle this part, this little corner of it. Okay, I did it. Now I feel more comfortable about that now. Let me just move on to the next part that I can handle. It may not even be a full quarter. It may just be a 1/8 of the circumstance, but filtering itself, I get into an emotional brainstorming phase. And I begin to really question and lean into what I'm going through at the time, but void of emotion. That's like the most important part. I don't say, why am I going through this? Or why this happened to me? Why am I going through this thing? And I wonder why it's happening for me, right? So that same questions, but no emotion to cloud my judgment of what's going on. Because if I'm asking with emotions, I'm not even going to be able to see the answers properly because that energy is in the way. So by way of filtering, man, that's how I get through so much, because it helps me to really see things clearly. And the best part about it is it helps me to step out of my shoes, right? I begin to see it from different vantage points. I begin to see it as if I'm laying on a couch and there's someone in a chair across me with a little notepad asking me questions. It helps me to become my own therapist in that moment, as opposed to having to let that situation pass. Then all of a sudden, days later or months later or even years later, I realize, oh, that's what I was supposed to get from it. No, you can get that in that moment. And that's why I said I wrote the book of how to really help people get strengthened during the moment while they're going through it, as opposed to having to emotionally get through that moment. Then all of a sudden you realize on the end of that bad choice that you may have made because of your emotions. No, you can get through things now properly by way of filtering them and, determining what you ought to do next.
Yeah, it's a really cool word. I love the name of the book, Filtering: The Way to Extract Strength from the Struggle. You mentioned that this is a process that you've developed. When did it hit you like, oh shit, man, this is actually a process that I do and not everyone else knows what the heck I'm talking about? This inside, it makes sense, right? But I have to put a name to it. When did it click where you're like, oh, geez, this is called filtering. I'm going to write a book and explain exactly what this is so someone else can use it.
Now, to give you, look, honestly, now, I just released the book when we released it in September 6th, 2022. I came up with this in 2016, 6 years prior. So it was then I was going through some difficulties, man, going through potential divorce at the time, was separated. And it was tough, having a son and going through that at the same time, very difficult time for me. And I had a whole lot of questions, needed a whole lot of answers. Again, was trying to find how to get some answers. So I began turning to books, and turned to a book by Les Brown. I think it was called The 12 Laws of Success. And just began that I wasn't a reader before this point either, by the way. I'm talking about reading was like melatonin. It would put me to sleep. Like if I ever had insomnia, and I'm not even joking, when I had insomnia moments, I would literally pick up the book, pick up a Bible, something. Any book would put me to sleep. And I began reading so much. I started reading 9 books every 3 weeks. Oh. And it was transformative for me to where I started getting so many answers to life. I began seeing every author as a mentor. And I'm like, okay, I just finished this book. It just gave me 40 years of wisdom, right? So I'm like, after reading another book, I just got 80 years of wisdom. Just from 2 books. So that's how I started looking at everything, and it helped me break life down. And like you said, I didn't have a name for what was helping me to cope with things and get through things. But the best thing that came about my learning was it helped me to lean into the difficult moments of my life, things that I never addressed. Going through, again, running from a shooting at 6 years old and being the only person there. Nobody else was there with me. I thought I was gonna get shot in the back. Like I saw the other kid get shot. So I'm like, finally addressing those things, I was able to get strength from those things. Addressing what I was going through, even during that time of divorce, I was able to say, you know what? Okay, I'm going through this. Let me not be so insecure as I was, right? Because I was so focused on all my negative points because, my ex was saying, you're this, you're that, you're that. And I was fighting for the marriage. So it was difficult to keep hearing, you're this, you suck, you know what I mean? And I'm fighting for us and our family. I had to start to focus on my good qualities as opposed to allowing others to validate me so much, because their validation can fluctuate, right? It's like it could be good with it and it's bad the next. So I had to really start to love myself, to be honest. And by leaning into my situations, and when I did that, I said, what am I doing? Okay, I'm doing the same thing as we do with air or water. I'm filtering it. I'm doing this. I said, okay, I'm gonna call this filtering for myself. And I just started writing about it during that same time.
So cool, man. It's I love hearing that, because the way the thought comes about, there's always a cool story. And congrats to writing that and publishing. That's awesome.
Thank you.
I just give you an open forum here. Anything we didn't talk about that you're like, JM, I got to share this with the audience before we wrap up?
I mean, honestly, we covered a lot, man. I love the conversation, but I would say, if nothing else, again, people, your viewers, listeners, they would definitely get this from the book. But just overall, if you never even touched the book, I really want for people to understand that so much of what we go through in life, the bad stuff. Let's talk about the bad stuff, right? So much of these difficult things that we experience in life, these bad things aren't always meant to be fixed and to be made into good. And what I mean by that is, these bad things are here to just simply help make us better. We always complain about all this bad stuff because we're only seeing it from one viewpoint, one perspective. But just imagine if you realize these bad things was put in front of me to actually refine me, to make me better. If I remove this bad stuff all the time, I'm not going to improve as a person. I'm not going to grow. So, the same way you said earlier, embrace the suck, right? Like, you got to start to embrace these difficult moments, these bad things, and realize they're here to actually assist you. And you hold that perspective, you will complain less and you will embrace more. And I dare say you will grow on a daily basis.
It's well put, man. And absolutely, it's key. I hope everybody hears that, rewind that tape and listen to it again, because that is really well put. I love that as a final point. Brother, if people want to connect with you, Joel, whether it's talk about PLT, check out what you're doing with Nike, where's the best place to connect with you online?
The best place, joelbgreen.com. That's joelbgreen.com is my website. You can get in touch with me directly there. Proleveltraining.com is, our business page. But I'm also on Instagram pretty heavy, probably more than any other social network now. J Green PLT, that's Jay Green PLT. I love engaging with everyone. And that for me is about impact, influence, where I can help influence someone, just making a change. So definitely love to connect with you guys.
Well, man, I appreciate you coming on today, sharing your wisdom, your guidance. There's so many amazing stories that you shared, brother, and just keep doing what you're doing, man. You're changing the world for a better place, and I appreciate that. So thank you for being here, man.
Nah, JM, thanks so much, man. I really appreciate it.
I mean, guys, you go back, there's so many good, I'm looking at them: shake to wake, courage is a bridge, fearless to become fearless. I mean, it was just one after another of just really important points that he made in such a succinct point. It was so concise and well put. So I really enjoyed the conversation. Make sure you share this, get it out there, guys, share it. We want people to hear Joel, know what he's doing, because there's a lot of goodness there. Until next time, I appreciate you all. We will talk to you very soon. Thank you so much for listening. If this content is delivering value to you, please make sure to subscribe, rate, and review us. That helps us build this community, and that is what we are all about. Building this community as big as we can, helping as many people as we can, and deliver as much value as possible. Be sure to head over to letsgowinpodcast.com for information on my coaching courses, and make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Let's Go Win 365. Let's go win and transcend in life.
This is the Let's Go Win podcast with your host, J.M. Ryerson.